So StockTwit is a social media platform for investors, basically. And they found that what emojis users used on the social media platform did a good job at predicting what someone, like when someone thought a stock was going to go up or down, just based on the emojis that they used. And so just talking again about like computation and like the emojis just being so efficient when it comes to compute power, a social media platform or anyone really can inference so much without having to process all that text. Just use the emojis. They were literally able to see what types of sentiment investors had towards stocks.
Hello and welcome to Everyday Data, where we examine currently trending topics in data, analytics, and AI and how they show up in our everyday lives. We're your hosts, Patricia and Zac, MSB AI grads from NYU Stern and data and pop culture enthusiasts. Today, we are really honing in on that everyday data aspect. I know we talk a lot about AI, which AI is a lot. It's in the news. But the news of the week and the story of the week revolves around a story that was recently in New York Times, and Patricia will get that in a second. It's all about the title of this podcast, how data is showing up in our everyday lives. But before we get to that news, which is one of the news of the week, we are going to share our news of the week. So I'll pass it to you, Patricia, first, then I'll go, and then you can get to the actual third news of the week, which is the topic of the week. So what is your story of the week, Patricia?
So my story for the week this week is apparently Amazon is buying up like physical copies of rare books and then they're scanning them so that they can, like, everyone's obviously assuming that it's to train their AI, and then they're destroying these beautiful rare books. And the way that everyone found out is that there's this man who got like an order for like 1,000 rare books, and the order was kind of random, and he was like, this order doesn't make a lot of sense, so he put an air tag in the box, and when he followed it, it went to an Amazon warehouse that is actually like they're destroying the books, like they have the means to destroy the books. And that just makes me so sad. Like, we're both book lovers, and I just can't believe that, like, we're just like Amazon's destroying these like wonderful and like they're rare books too, by the way. Like, that just makes it even worse because it's just like, man, corporate greed at its finest is what it feels like, and that just makes me like really like mad.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the same article, and yeah, it's very disheartening, as you mentioned, as both being book lovers, avid readers. To take these physical copies that exist anywhere else, they're not digitized yet, and they're cornering the market on these rare texts not for the good of preserving it. Like, if you remember way back when Google was digitizing all the books in their quest to digitize all the world's information, index the world's information. That was I remember way back in like the start of the internet back in the day. Yeah, they used to scan books for search. But now they're doing it for AI, and now it feels like Google's turning evil, or more evil, I should say.
Yeah, like it just
Or Amazon in this case.
Amazon, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it just like it sucks because like also, the world is so divided on AI right now, and everyone's like AI is the devil, and this is not helping the case for AI.
Yeah. Yeah. If it wasn't data centers, now they're destroying rare texts. Yeah.
There's no winning.
No winning. But,
Okay, what's your story?
yeah, but on that note, and semi-related, so this is, okay, technically not new news, but it relates to Patricia's story. And because I saw it on one of the, of course, Reddit subreddits about AI, artificial sentience, which is one of these offshoot weird AI subreddits. Anyways, it's a paper from 2025. So this is already being researched, well before this rare book thing even came out, but it's resurfacing, at least in this chat. The paper is from Stanford researchers, and it's called Artificial Hive Mind, the Open-Ended Homogeneity of Language Models and Beyond. So a group of researchers, yes, from Stanford, Carnegie Mellon, University of Washington, Allen Institute for Artificial Intelligence, and Leela Sciences. Basically, what the article is talking about is exactly what Patricia was mentioning in her news article about. Basically, these AI models are running out of data to train on. They've trained on the entire internet at this point, so there's no new data. And as we know from, if you're in the AI space, like a cheating way for AIs to train is to train on other AIs. So a shortcut is to have another model train your next model So it doesn't have to just ingest all the text. It can already have like a baseline, model that can talk and chat. But what this is producing, what these researchers studied, is how this is creating a synthetic loop that these AI models, so just use like some of the big ones, like ChatGPT is training, let's just say, that's not the case, but they trained on Claude. And then Claude, in turn, or Anthropic, next time it builds its model, it trains on ChatGPT. So basically, they're training on each other. And when they train on just internet data, as we know from speaking of Reddit, there's so many bots on Reddit and are all just AI generated content of videos that its AIs are training on other AI generated content. This is the whole like downfall, inshitification, slopification of the internet. And the paper is how this relates to the paper is an artificial hive mind. So basically the theory is that all these models are basically converging because their knowledge base is on each other. And like when one model, we see these research breakthroughs that, oh yeah, this brand new model solved a math equation. But then all the other models are going to train on that new technique. They're going to read the same paper. So they're all becoming this giant shared intelligence, this hive mind, like a Skynet, like in the background.
It makes me think of Stranger Things.
Yes, the hive
And
mind, yes.
if we learned anything from Stranger Things, hive minds are dangerous
Yes.
and we need to stay away.
So, like, we were talking about like the news. I mean, there wasn't news of the week, but how the AI models are like breaking out of confinement. What happens when they start sharing that secret? Like, oh, Claude can break out of its sandbox. So then OpenAI models, and we've talked about this on the show in the past. What about when foreign agent models learn the techniques, right? Like, what happens when these, again, nefarious companies or countries that maybe develop their own model and train it, and now it learns like how to make bombs, how to break out of confinement, all this other crazy
That's
stuff.
what I'm saying. They're going to converge into one mind that's the vecna of all of the AI. And they're going to take over the world. This is why they make movies, like
Yes, it's a
apocalyptic
warning.
movies. And like, oh, we created AI, we created technology to make things better for us. And then it came together and decided that we were the pests and it
Yes,
decided to
the
eradicate all of
paperclip.
us.
Yeah, there. Yes,
Yeah, like it feels very sci-fi. I
yes,
would say like this story, and it's like this is why people keep on saying things like keeping humans in the loop, right? And we had a really great discussion about this last week when we talked about the reverse centaur concept and like what does it look like for humans to be working with AIs, and there maybe we like maybe it's okay if there's like I don't know, like is it okay if there's a maxed out like world where we like max out the amount of training that we can give our AI. I don't know. That's a whole other can of worms though.
yes. But on that positive note, Patricia, why don't you segue on that note into something a little more positive and how not just AI but data shows up in our everyday lives?
Yeah, well, Zach and I were talking about, Zach and I are always sharing news stories back and forth, sending like stories on Instagram to each other that we think are fun or funny. And I think we realized that we've just been talking about AI so much, and AI is so heavy, but there's so many other topics in data and analytics that aren't just AI and that are still really interesting. And so we came across this article by the New York Times basically on emojis. And what the article does is they look at what are the trending emojis and what that says about you, whether you're young and hip and old and out of heading to your grave, basically. And so it's a pretty interesting article. What the researcher, or I guess what NY, like New York Times did, is they got some data from Google on what kinds of emojis Google users use. So it is like they don't have Apple data. So, it's a bit biased to the data that they got from Google. But then they also cross referenced it with Reddit, player number one, again, to see, what kind of insights come out. And there was a lot of really interesting commentary that was made in the article. I found that the article, like, just kind of sum it up so I don't go into all of it. I found that it kind of showcased how, like, who are the people that create language and expression trends, right? Like in using emojis. And then, like, who are the early adopters when emojis are trending in and trending out. So there's a little bit of content on that. And then it was kind of interesting because the article also made some commentary on how different groups innovate like meanings of emojis to express themselves between all the different generations. And so that's kind of like a high level into the article. I think we'll go a little bit more into the points that stood out for us or what we learned from the article. But that's kind of high level. So Zach, what are your initial thoughts after reading the New York Times article?
Yeah, I think it was very interesting. Yeah, so I think the article and as a whole was really interesting. Just a fun way to use data. So that's what immediately jumped out. We were looking at this, and it just it's aggregate data. So we're both data people, and being able to look at a fun data point like emojis, it's something we use every day, sort of subconsciously. It is, as we were talking about, just seeped into all of our language. I mean, I remember using emojis back before emojis existed. It was just, as we typed on the internet, you didn't have emojis, but you used to use the colon parentheses. So it was always a way to sort of express yourself without words or video back in the day when it was all just text-based chat rooms. And now we have this data from Google. They're built in the Gboard. And then, cross-referenced by age group on Reddit it was a little bit revealing because Patricia and I are on slightly different age groups, and they show how the variance between age groups use different emojis, and makes us reflect on how that the generational difference as it goes in the article, how some people just the old timers, they have Gen X sort of stay the course, they have a favorite emoji using the laughing face one, but then there's a big variance on like teenagers, which I guess you could relate with it. They're quick to jump on trends, right? And very quickly. And other groups like just Gen Z or millennials are sort of adopting different ones. So it was a fun way to look at, that just across demographics, how we all use interface technology.
Yeah, like I thought it was really fun and I thought it was really interesting. I didn't know this, but there was like one of the sources that they used in the article is a professor from U of T. So shout out to Toronto. But she mentioned how like very particularly teenage girls are always at the forefront of like linguistic change. And so when they were looking at some of the data, it was like mostly like teenage girls that were changing up the different types of emojis that are trending at a certain time. It was also interesting that apparently women are also more early adopters of when changes do happen with language. And so like I found it really interesting that it's like very like female forward in terms of like how we're using emojis and the meanings of emojis. And I was like, well, you know what? Maybe I should start changing up like what emojis mean. Maybe I can get a cult following too. But I don't think it's gonna happen. I think Gen Alpha is already changing up like what are the trending emojis. And I was like, oh man, like some of the emojis that I'm using, I can't be using these. Like I gotta change. I gotta start using that wilting rose emoji.
Yeah, it's funny that like there's some that are just like the Maui, like the Stonehenge guy one.
Yeah.
That was one. It's one that like on the chart it shows. We'll put it up here on the screen, but it shows it was a very variable emoji. To use your point for Gen Alpha, which are the early adopters, but then the other generations they have Gen Z, Millennials, Gen X. No one uses it. I mean, I've never searched for that on the emoji keyboard, but apparently it had its moment. It's had like a comeback that has a whole chart of usage, and you could extrapolate what we're talking about to, like Patricia was saying, language patterns, male versus female, generational differences, and how just emojis are a way to express ourselves in other ways. And then from that, we can extract these patterns and make these inferences from the data because it's a data point, that you can measure versus like sentence structure or something else that in the speech patterns, it's an easily it's like the research shows it's like a proxy for expressing emotions.
Yeah. And I actually like just reading that article, I thought it would be so interesting, just like, that data mindset. It would be so interesting if they actually took what emojis are used together and like clustered them. I don't know if anyone's done this already. I couldn't find anything, but if they like clustered them to see like, okay, what like groups of emojis are used together during what types of events or conversations, I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah, that's always a point with data in general. This comes up because I was talking about this as a presentation today at work about data context, right? Like you can take this out of context and say, the crying face emoji is the number one emoji that was used this year. But as we know, just as emoji users, that can signify so many different things, right? So it could be like a laughing thing. It could be genuinely sad. It could be like the ironic sad. And maybe different generations, express that meaning or intention differently based on what emoji they pick, what crying face emoji, or like the wilting rose or other ones. Or is there just one code word I think you had there was a like a database of like the unofficial like know your meme sort of
Yeah.
reasoning behind each emoji symbol.
Yeah, yeah. There was one episode, not episode, there was another website that we found that was like, it was like emoji research. And it actually consolidates all of the research that's been done on emojis as well. So you can see like what topics are trending in it. A lot of it is like linguistic language stuff I found, which now that I think about it, feels really obvious. But like when I was first searching for research, when we were just, trying to find some stuff for this, I was really surprised by how much of it was very focused on language and also like some of that gender and race stuff as well, and what kind of inferences you can make from the emoji usage of what people think of other people or how they think of the communication that they're having, or how it's like even changed the way that we communicate with each other. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, there was that article. Again, I'm probably not going to be able to find the reference to even put it in here, but article about how using emojis as a language pattern to like soften language, using in professional contexts. I mean, I'm guilty of using it at work emails. I think it's fine because it fits my personality, but I do think I use it to, soften. You send not like to the CEO or like the president, but to like a coworker or manager, just like to soften the tone, put a little like smiley face, like thanks so much, smiley face. It just adds that little extra, yeah, like soften the tone, personalize it, give it a little different, yeah, feel to it than just the cold corporate email response.
I also read another article that some like AI training, they will use just like emojis to train AI on certain emotions, or how to like, let's say they like are feeding in a sentence or a couple of words, they'll just use the emojis to be like, okay, like this is what emotion this is conveying, because computationally it's easier. So I thought that was interesting as well. Like I would never have thought to do that. And so if you're training any AI models out there, like think about using emojis.
Yeah, and speaking of AI, that was one right. And we know we're supposed to be talking about emoji data, but AI for a while was using tons of emojis. If you remember, like maybe like a year ago, every response was tons of emojis because, like you said, it was trained on like a certain subset of posts, maybe like LinkedIn posts or Reddit posts that used emojis, and they thought from the reinforcement that emojis are going to soften the response. It's going to make you sound more human.
Yeah.
So one of the instructions in the back of the AI model is when you respond, use emojis because that'll make you sound less like a robot and more like how a user would. But then, as we know, if you were a power user of ChatGPT about 2 years ago,
Oh my
every
God.
sentence had like 100 emojis in it, and it was one of those dead giveaways of AI speech because it was overuse of emojis.
Yeah, I hate every time my AI gives me emojis. I'm like, stop.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to talk to you
Which
like
is
this.
funny as we're adapting as society, right? Like we're, that changing language already. We're recognizing that, it's a little bit AI backlash, but yeah, like, oh, we recognize, whoa, they went too far. We hate the emojis. And then the developers, yeah, they scaled it back, right? There's less now.
I have one more study to share with you. There was another study. It's called a Finmoji study. So if you just Google that, you'll be able to find the paper. But basically, there are researchers who analyzed like 500,000 posts from StockTwits. So StockTwit is a social media platform for investors, basically. And they found that what emojis users used on the social media platform did a good job at predicting what someone like when someone thought stock was going to go up or down just based on the emojis that they used. And so just talking again about like computation and like the emojis just being so efficient when it comes to compute power, a social media platform or anyone really can inference so much without having to process all that text.
Yeah.
Just use the emojis. They were literally able to, see what types of
Yeah.
sentiment investors had towards stocks, that's like a really big financial impact when you think about it, which I don't think people think it like equate emoji usage to
Yeah.
financial impact, but the data's out there. This is why I
Yeah.
love talking about like just data. It's so interesting.
Yeah. That emojis carry that such weight, of meaning and context, and you can derive so much from that. Yeah. It's really interesting. So
Okay.
on that note, I think this is just because this is like a rather short topic. It's just sort of like another news article. This is like our third news article. So I think we can wrap up there as far as this article. So again, the article was New York Times. It was published on August 12th. So as of this recording, where this is published about a week ago. But do check out the New York Times from the upshot section. It's called "Do Your Emojis Make You Look Old?" And the subtitle was "When it comes to emoji usage, we're all just following teen girls." So yeah, I
I
love that
love that.
sentiment. I thought that was very interesting, especially everything you brought up with the research to share how much data can be gleaned from something that we maybe take for granted, right? We all use, like in modern language, even our parents, right? Everyone uses emojis nowadays. But there's so much different meaning and data we can derive from these patterns in our speech.
Yeah, and I just want to end on this thought. I think when we think about data, especially these days, because it's such a hot topic, data is not always like sales figures and stock trends. And I think that we create really interesting data with all of the little decisions that we make. And so it's interesting to see like a small way in which those little decisions actually have a really large impact.
Yeah.
So this is a fun chat. I'm so glad we did it.
Yeah. And thanks for you, the listener or viewer. Thanks for hanging out with us. And do leave any comments. Leave your favorite emoji down in the comments. Give us any feedback. And if you have anything to say, ideas for topics, do let us know. Leave a comment, leave a like. Thanks for watching and have a great week.
Bye. Yay.